Before the 1920s, women were to stay within the home. They were known as Gibson girls and wore their long hair loosely on top of their head and wore long straight skirts and shirts with high collars. At times, they were allowed to work in factories and mills, low-paying jobs that had horrible conditions. But World War I began to shape the teenagers and the women of the 1910s by learning from the mistakes and problems of elder generations and becoming the generation of youth. By the end of the war, there were more jobs, more ways to find transportation, and more rights for women, creating the pathway for the new breed of young liberals. By the 1920s, middle-class women had established work outside the home, becoming educated and even going to college. The women could work as nurses, teachers, shop clerks, or secretaries, jobs that had a higher status than that of the domestic servant and usually had better pay than factory or mill work. Having secured women's suffrage with the 19th Amendment, women took up new concerns. While some worked for world peace, the Flappers, liberated young women who had behaved and dressed in a bold manner, strove to depart from the norm and the ideas about a woman's place. They bobbed their hair, wore short, straight dresses, flattened their chests, smoked, and drank. They were essentially seen as immoral, but full of revolutionary self-determination. The term flapper first appeared in Great Britain after World War I. It was used to describe young girls who were in between being a child and woman. It was a metaphor to compare the girl to a young bird learning how to fly. The flapper look we know today was coined by Gabrielle Coco Chanel, a fashion designer in France who used comfort as a basis for her designs. Her fashion themes included simple suits and dresses, women's trousers, and costume jewelry. This boy look of short skirts and trousers held obvious contrast to the previous decades of corsets, high-neck shirts, and long skirts. To look more like a boy, flappers tightly wound their chests with strips of cloth in order to flatten it, while the waist of the flapper's clothes would drop to the hip line. She wore stockings made of rayon, or artificial silk, which the flapper often wore rolled over a garter belt. In the 1920s, the foxtrot and the charleston took the scene, dances that involved much leg-caking and movement of the arms. This kind of dancing would have been impossible for corseted women, thus showing off the new freedom of movement and breathing that the flappers' clothing had. Many people said that the flappers' dresses and haircuts made them look mannish, but that's what the flappers wanted. They didn't want men to see them as a separate, lesser human being any longer. Wearing corsets and fainting had given the men the impression that women were weak and unable to take care of themselves. So the flapper began to do everything possible to get away from the image of a weak, helpless woman. They danced, they drank, they smoked, they did whatever they wanted. They were the new generation of youth, and they were determined to set themselves apart from that weak woman image and into that of a strong, liberated, and able human being. No longer would women be seen as weak. Flappers had set out to become self-determined and strong with personality, and they succeeded. They had become the norm and were even pictured in movies. Clara Bow was one of these movie stars, and her best overall role was that of a tomboy. Movies just weren't movies if they didn't have a flapper to twist things up, to add a little excitement, or to just show how heroic a woman could be. Many famous singers, actresses, and dancers during the 1920s were now flappers, such as Annette Hanshaw, a jazz dancer and singer, Evelyn Brent, the flirty star, Phyllis Hayes, the kissing kitten, Mary Pickford, a curly-haired Canadian movie star, Nancy Carroll, the smiling sweetheart, and many others. Zelda Fitzgerald was the original flapper. She described herself as, without a thought for anyone else, I did not have a single feeling of inferiority, or shyness, or doubt, and no moral principle. She is still used as a muse for heroines in many novels today. Though normal now in modern-day times, flappers had created equality between men and women by doing as they pleased. They also created a new fashion of comfort that has evolved into obvious personalities in every woman, and can be seen everywhere.